Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual conference on LA County Sheriff's Department jails, hosted by the Civilian Oversight Commission. My name is Danielle Butler Vappie, and I'm the Interim Executive Director of the Civilian Oversight Commission. Today, we're going to be discussing the basic needs for those in jails, but we do plan on having a series of additional sessions to focus on some other areas, such as institutional services for improved rehabilitation, and transitional services for reintroduction into the community. So we'll have more for you on that later. But now we have a great panel of speakers lined up to discuss life inside a 6-by-8-foot cell. Today, you'll hear from Melissa Camacho, who is a senior staff attorney at the ACLU of Southern California, followed by Dignity and Power Now's Executive Director, Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson, who also serves as the chair of the Civil Brand Commission. And from the Los Angeles County Office of Inspector General, we have Chief Deputy Dara Williams and Monitor Investigator Harmandjian. We also have LA County Sheriff's Department Assistant Sheriff Sergio Aloma, who leads the custody operations. And today, your moderator will be Commissioner Luis Garcia, who serves on the Commission's Conditions of Confinement Ad Hoc Committee. I want to thank everyone for logging on today and joining our discussion. And with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you again for joining us to learn about the living conditions in the jails. My name is Luis S. Garcia, and I'm a member of the Civilian Oversight Commission. And I work for Advocates for Human Potential as a statewide behavioral health consultant, helping public and private mental health substance abuse providers to improve California's behavioral health system infrastructure. I also volunteer as an associate clinical social worker, where I specialize in working with people with mild to moderate mental illness, with some that are exiting jail and prison. I have also spent time inside the Los Angeles County jails, but not visiting or inspecting. I have slept there many times from 1986 into the 2000s. Some of you may have read the LA Times piece where I wrote about my experience of finding hope and success after I was incarcerated. I'd like to take this moment to share a bit more. In the early 90s, while I was incarcerated in the Men's Central Jail, my late father, Luis A. Garcia, was the only reason I received care. He called the jail psychiatrist to ensure my psychiatric medicine was special ordered because it was not in the jail pharmacy's formulary. Most aren't so lucky to have such an advocate. Unfortunately, I continued to struggle with my behavioral health, and after cycling in and out of jail at 22, I was sentenced to the California State Prison for 3 years back in 1991. I tried to make the best of it. In 1995, while at Century Regional Detention Facility, just before being sent back to state prison for a second time, I earned my high school diploma. I remember feeling proud that day. At 27, I finally accomplished a societal rite of passage. I was no longer a high school dropout. Yet despite this accomplishment, I once again found myself back in custody as a parole violator in the county jail. Sent back to prison, I asked for help. It's interesting to think back on that moment. 25 years ago, when I began to feel a sense of hope while talking to the forensic psychologist while in Chino State Prison, I felt she recognized my humanity. Returning home, my reentry was met with success and continued struggles. Those struggles ended in 2004 when I made a decision while in graduate school to change the trajectory of my life. I decided to quit drinking, and now I'm nearly 19 years in sobriety. In that time, I have been fortunate to return to school, become professionally employed, work in the public and private sector, where I was able to complete my doctoral dissertation research, where I studied the public value of a higher education partnership within the Los Angeles County jail system. I have spoken at graduations in the jail, and I have spoken to volunteers recognition ceremonies for the department a few times. I share this experience today to underscore how the most recent data reports 13,689 people incarcerated across the jail system still encounter deplorable jail conditions that fall below the standard of care. And as media reports continue to report, primarily inside the Men's Central Jail in Twin Towers. There is such a breadth of issues to discuss in the jails, from mental health and acknowledging that people die in jail, some who have not even been convicted of a crime. Today, we're going to continue the conversation and start with the basics by discussing general living conditions for people inside the jails. The jails are regularly inspected by outside agencies and should provide at least the minimum standard required by law to ensure the conditions are humane. However, the Constitution is a floor, not a ceiling, and LA County could provide a higher level of care than what's mandated by our Constitution, and thus a clearer path toward recovery. But what is it really like to living inside a 6x8 foot cell? Today, the panelists will review incarcerated people's daily routines with a focus on basic needs such as food, running water, and laundry. We'll also discuss the areas that affect a person's well-being, such as access to sunlight, appropriate temperatures, cleanliness, and personal space, and the ability to sleep. As the Commission continues to evaluate jail conditions, we welcome continued community feedback. After the speakers provide their expertise, there will be an opportunity for the community to ask questions. In addition, written public comments regarding the jails can be submitted online. Please visit our website at coc.lacounty.gov for instructions. The deadline to submit written public comment is 5 p.m. on Saturday, May 6th. And now, turning it over to today's speakers, although we've told you the names and the titles of the panel speakers, I invite each of you to introduce yourself, including your preferred pronouns, and a little bit about your background, if you wish. Without further ado, I will turn it over to the first speaker, Melissa Camacho, who is a senior staff attorney at ACLU.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa Camacho. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I have been with the ACLU as a jails monitor in the criminal justice program for a little over 2 years. Prior to that, I was an appellate criminal defense attorney, and I've lived here in Los Angeles for over 25 years now. Today, I'm going to be focusing on, 5 different issues in the LA County jails. We learn about conditions of confinement in the jails primarily through a voice line system that people within the jails can call us, collect from any phone number within the facility. And that's how we get a lot of the information that you'll see in the slides today. Next slide. We have a crisis in LA County with in-custody deaths. We broke all records in 2021 with what ended up being over a death a week. The issues continue, and this year we've seen 13 deaths in just the first 18 weeks of the year. One issue I want to highlight as we talk about what life is like in a cell is that your entire life is controlled by the custodial staff who are the only way you can access your basic needs. We received a call last year after somebody passed away from somebody who basically heard what happened and wanted to report his side of the story. I'll share what he told me. I passed it on to the Sheriff's Department and the Office of the Inspector General. We have no investigatory capability, so all I can share is what he told me. I cannot attest to anything more than that. This man said that in MCJ, he could hear somebody in the row below him at around 8:30 p.m. call out that his chest was hurting. He said that for the next 2.5 hours, he heard the man calling and saying he couldn't breathe. He, quote, kept calling out and called out man down. He said during this period, he heard some interactions this man had with the deputies and heard a deputy telling him, if you're talking, you can breathe and you'll be all right. At about 1 a.m., the calling out stopped. And sometime between 4 and 6 a.m., the deputies noticed that the man was unconscious. In the commotion that followed, this man heard guards say that someone on the tier must have given him something and suggested searching the cells. This man and other people on the row got upset and called out to the guards saying, you made us listen to him pass away. So I share this story because a large number of the deaths are listed as natural causes. And this death may have been listed as a natural cause, and perhaps there was more going on. Perhaps this man's life could have been saved. There are two recommendations I make today that are just so basic and have to do with the reporting of in-custody deaths. Thankfully, starting January 1st of this year, there's a new law that requires the Sheriff's Department to post when a death occurs. I recommend two things. First is closing a loophole in that law that is kind of in the way the reporting is happening now, that it's only reporting the facility the person died in and not the facility in which they fell ill. And so right now the public reporting obscures kind of where most of the deaths are taking place because a lot of them kind of ultimately occur in the hospital. I also recommend that the COC ask for the information for deaths to be added for at least 2021 and 2022 so the public can start seeing trends over time. Next slide. Another very frequent complaint that we get is about visual body cavity searches. Now, these are not strip searches, which involve like taking off clothing and squatting and coughing. These are visual body cavity searches, which involve stripping naked, moving your genitals to side or up or down, bending over, spreading your buttocks, and then while the person searching you shines a flashlight in your anus. We get very frequent calls, people reporting that this is sexual harassment, that it's degrading, that it's humiliating, reports of the people conducting the tests laughing at their genitalia, also reporting that these searches sometimes take place in a group where they can be seen by other people who are incarcerated and also be subject sometimes to mocking by other people who are seeing this happen. Because they're so routine, we at ACLU believe that this is just too big of an opportunity for sexual harassment and abuse. We've tried to kind of reach out to the PREA coordinator and impress upon him like our concerns, and generally the response that we get is that these are within policy and routine and necessary. However, the Citizens Commission on Jail Violence in 2012 saw that even strip searches at that point were causing problems in the jails and kind of bad relationships between people who are incarcerated and staff, and recommended body scanners to, quote, largely eliminate the need for strip searches. So now, years later, we have body scanners, but there does not appear to be a decline at all in visual body cavity searches, and possibly even more than there were in 2012. Something that we recommend, OIG reports on body scanner use because of that Citizens Commission on Jail Violence report. We recommend that the OIG not report on body scanner use, but on whether or not strip searches and visual body cavity searches are actually going down. And perhaps an investigation into the policies in place and recommendations could be given to where body cavity searches could be prohibited or at least greatly restricted. The promise in 2012 was that these would be largely eliminated. And the question I have is how is that going to happen? Next slide, please. In high observation housing, and that's for people with the most significant mental illness who are a danger to themselves or others or cannot properly take care of themselves. People, again, are completely dependent on custodial staff to provide for their basic needs. That is, whether or not they get a meal put through their tray slot, whether or not they're taken out for a shower, and whether or not any trash in their cell is taken out. And we get frequent complaints, and I know the Sybil Brand Commission has reported extensively as well on the issue of cleanliness in cells and the issue of people getting out of their cells for showers, or even getting out of their cells at all to see sunlight or see other human beings. As an example, I put here just some of a story that our office received from an individual named John M. This was from an interview just last week. And John reported that the water in his cell was off for about 5 days because the toilet had overflowed in the next cell. This is something I hear about frequently as well in my visits. And so because of that, the water in his cell was shut off, and then his toilet overflowed, and that overflow was not cleaned for a couple of days. He reported that he was not taken out for a shower for more than 2 weeks. When I asked if there was a quote that he wanted to share, he provided the following. I don't like it when they have our food sitting out for hours. It's ice cold. We're given no utensils to eat it with, nothing. I've had to lick mine like a dog. He also had a very visible hernia and was in a lot of pain. But he says that when he's asked nurses who've walked by for help, the response is always, "You're not on my list today." And I don't think that's because nurses don't care. I think it's because they do have too long of lists, and there's just it's not possible to take care of all of the people that are in custody right now, both in HOH and TTCF and throughout the facilities. Next slide, please. We've also seen a dramatic increase in the number of people in medium observation housing in Men's Central Jail. So medium observation housing is for people who have significant enough mental illness that they cannot be housed in the general population. Since September, in part because of overcrowding within the IRC and the need to move people through the inmate reception center faster, the 5,000 floor of Men's Central Jail was largely converted to medium observation housing. Now, the problem there, it's very large dorm housing. So these aren't cells anymore. It's dorms, triple bunks, people all together who can't be in general population, but are now in MCJ together. One issue here is that the Board of Supervisors has recognized that Men's Central Jail is not fit for anybody to inhabit. And more recently, the director of CHS, Dr. Tim Belovich, has told the Civil Brand Commission and basically anybody who will listen that there should not be anybody with mental illness in Men's Central Jail. I'm quoting from his recent appearance at the SBC, quote, "Just the setting in general of Men's Central Jail is not a good place to have mentally ill individuals, and I advocate against it. And I know my custody partners advocate against it. But without any other options for housing, we are left with that. I don't believe that Men's Central Jail is a good place to have anyone who's mentally ill." And here on this slide, I share a little bit of a story of a man named Bobby, who I interviewed at MCJ a couple of months ago. He had first spent some time in IRC in a cell for over 12 hours with a broken toilet. He eventually made it to the MOH housing on the 5,000 floor of MCJ. But when he first arrived, it was so crowded, he had to sleep on the floor. There was no mat or bunk for him. He also did not have any medication. When he was arrested, he was taking medication for anxiety and Suboxone for addiction, but that was not continued when he came to the IRC. He was still on a wait list to be able to get to see somebody to get his medication. So he reported that he was agitated, he couldn't sleep, he's sweaty and restless. And this is generally the theme that we hear from people in the 5,000 floor. So you can imagine kind of the difficulty both of custodial staff being able to supervise large groups of people who are in real need of medication and treatment. And people generally report to us that they don't feel safe in those MOH facilities. Final slide, next slide, please. This story was reported to me by a man's sister. This man is still in custody, and her name is Gina, and she also submitted a full comment to the COC through the public comment portal today. Her brother suffers from significant mental illness and was brought to the IRC last summer on June 14, 2022. This is now Gina reporting. She said that her brother was thrown into a small cell with several other irritable inmates who quickly grew impatient with his mental state. Her brother can't control self-talk, and so he was attacked by another inmate who crushed his head onto a metal bench. She says the deputies turned a blind eye despite being present. And when they finally intervened, they pushed him up against a wall. And between the bench and the wall, apparently he broke his neck. She did not know about this for a long time, however. She says we did not get any calls from him. We reached out to the jail facility several times, and we were told repeatedly that he was fine, being treated, and the phones were at his discretion. They didn't give any information about any assault or any injuries or where he'd been transferred. 10 days later, my brother finally called in distress. He'd been transferred to LACU hospital since the attack and was being treated there for 10 days. He had stitches on his skull and a large neck brace surrounding his head, rendering him unable to move. This incident had a major impact on our lives. I became unwell with sleepless nights, many failures, and vivid nightmares, still not escaping my thoughts. Upon incarceration, the cops assured me, look at the bright side. At least he will now get the care he needs. And I want to just stop there and highlight that pernicious myth. There is no bright side for people with mental illness who were brought into the LA County jails, only trauma and no opportunity to heal. The jail conditions are inhumane and torturous. And LA County, unlike other counties, does not suffer from lack of knowledge. The ACLU, the OIG, the Civil Brand Commission, even the Sheriff's Department, and members of the community who want to have more avenues to share the horrors they've experienced have all put information out there. The question isn't what's happening in the LA County jails. The question is who's going to fix it, and how many thousands of people will suffer, and how many hundreds of people will die while we wait to see the change happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, we'll hear from Dignity and Power Now's Executive Director, Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson, who also serves as the chair of the Sybil Brand Commission. Please go ahead, Mark Anthony.
Good morning, commissioners, and good morning to everyone attending. Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson, chairperson of the Civil Brand Commission that inspects the various jails, co-executive director of Dignity and Power Now, fighting for power and dignity for all incarcerated people and their loved ones and communities, and member of the Justice LA Coalition. I have a few slides to share as I talk, just to help guide kind of the direction of the conversation. Please give me a moment while I do that. Okay, can you see my slides?
We do, they look good.
Thank you. So I think it's important to start by just kind of framing where we are at right now. Over the past weekend, the United Nations had a delegation visit Los Angeles to actually look at the conditions inside the jails. The focus of this delegation was actually to address law enforcement violence, specifically violence against Black people, and incarceration and houselessness. And it feels important to name this as we explore the conversation on conditions in custody. Many of those who spoke to the delegation of their experience inside painted a haunting and enduring picture of those conditions. One of our Dignity and Power Now members spoke directly to this. She was incarcerated in 2020 and said the process of being in women's jail is dehumanizing. Pre-housing is filthy and nasty. There was no screening process. So I was in the same space as people having mental health breakdowns. Once housed, we are placed on 23 and 24-hour lockdowns on alternating days. You have to shower, make phone calls, collect mail, if they give it to you, in that short open period, which ends up being about 30 minutes every other day. You have to be quiet so they can hear their radios. We didn't have reading materials. We were just stuck there in our own heads. Being in my head was not a good space. And because of these isolating conditions and because I was facing 25 to life, I had an anxiety attack. Despite thinking I was having a heart attack, they were very slow to give me medical attention. Eventually, I was seen and placed on a 5150 hold. I start here to say that the isolation, poor sanitary conditions, slow to negligent medical care, poor nutrition, dehumanizing strip searches comprise a picture and a section of the litany of conditions that community members have endured, certainly over the last decade, and certainly in CRDF. And I'm going to focus my attention on that because I actually don't think the women's jail gets enough attention publicly in terms of what's happening in there. In 2015, Dignity and Power Now published a report that documented the prevalent patterns of medical neglect and abuse experienced by Black women and women of color in CRDF. And that report shows how conditions fail to comply with domestic, regional, and international human rights law. And I was struck this past weekend to hear the testimony of people speaking to the UN that really demonstrated that across time, still today, 8 years after this report from 2015, these features of neglect and torturous conditions, as the previous speaker named, are defining features still of women's experience in the jail. Specifically a culture, and additionally a culture, of dehumanizing and disrespectful treatment by deputies is something that continuously gets lifted up by members of the community and people inside of the jails. Medical negligence is something that we have tried to call attention to. And in this 2015 report, we named the story of Nina, who really wanted us to know how terrible it was. And she cites conditions that 8 years prior to the previous quote from Robin, who I named, was very similar. 23-hour lockdown, dehumanizing conditions, poor treatment, inability and slow medical care. In fact, what she said was that after 2 weeks of this, the conditions drove her to attempt suicide. In fact, what she says is, all I wanted was to see a doctor and couldn't. That's why I jumped. And she was saying this with regard to the actual attempt itself. She survived, is disabled. We actually accompanied her to make a complaint to the OIG after this report was published. And I mention that simply to say that people inside are exhausting all avenues that they can to find relief. And yet, over the last decade, still today, these conditions remain not unique to Nina, but similar to what Black women are experiencing today. A note of personal alarm for me is that in 2015, the county moved clinical services out of the purview and employment of the Sheriff's Department into a new Department of Correctional Health Services, as we know, and that is under the Department of Health Services. And while I've spoken to clinicians in correctional health services that have tried to do their best to meet the need, as was mentioned, they've noted that the culture amongst the Sheriff's Department gets in the way. They've noted that simply the need is too great inside of the jails for the current workforce to actually meet its urgency, frequency, and ferocity. And they're calling for a reduction of the jail population. But more importantly, I think it is also really important to know that currently, even today, these conditions continue. In February of this year, myself and Dr. Grills, who is a commissioner on the Sybil Brand Commission, visited CRDF to speak to a number of women being held there. And what they shared was very similar things that we heard from Nina in 2015. Disrespectful treatment by deputies, a high volume of complaints being issued by women about deputy treatment. Deputies themselves handing the women stacks of complaint forms and telling them, complain all you want, nothing will change. Numerous concerns of slow medical care, non-responsiveness by staff, several pregnant women complaining to us, one recounting being in pain and there being a slow response by staff. She was eventually taken to the hospital where she lost her baby. It is not unique, these moments where we lift up the really horrendous stories that we hear across time. What they're drawing a constellation of is an ongoing and enduring trend. One of the women, we spoke to several in February in CRDF, I'll refer to her as Miss F for the sake of this presentation, shared again that deputies had been throwing their food on the floor, not letting them out of their rooms regularly, were tearing up pictures in the rooms, barely allowing them to shower, calling them the B word and the N word, also something that Nina said happened in 2015. I think what is one of the most things that's alarming about our visit, and you see here, this is a copy of some of our inspection forms that you find on our website, and you see things certainly regarding rust and mold in the showers, sinks not working, deep cleaning needed in the showers, water that has a faint smell of a chemical that I confirmed for myself is reminiscent of bleach. These things are all happening, but when combined with deputy culture, the conditions become, as was named earlier, tortuous. 1 week after Ms. F issued these complaints to us in person at CRDF, her lawyer reached out to us, deeply concerned that she was experiencing retaliation. In fact, what she was told is from Ms. F is that deputies were upset that the women went over their heads by speaking to commissioners about the dehumanizing treatment. Her lawyer herself went down to CRDF to go visit Mrs. F and was in the waiting room for 25 minutes. Ms. F never showed. Lori went back down to speak to the sheriff deputies to see what happened and was told by the sheriffs that she could not see her client because she was on discipline. It actually took another deputy to intervene and say, this is a professional visit, which supersedes her being held on discipline. After seeing her, the lawyer said that Miss F was distraught, crying, sobbing at least for 5 minutes after their time together. And at this moment, I think it's important to harken back again to what Nina mentioned in 2015 about how the conditions in the jails that many women, including Black women, face, driving them to suicide. I was shocked when the lawyer reported to us as commissioners that Ms. F felt like she was being pushed to her edge. In fact, what she was told was that a deputy said to her, "Why don't you go cut yourself? Isn't that what is in your file?" There is a lot that can be said about CRDF, and in the 10 minutes that I have, you will not hear the half of it. Mold and rust in the showers, lack of adequate nutrition for pregnant women who are given sandwiches that look like bread, a slice of cheese, and another piece of bread, drinking water that has chemical remnants, rashes, lack of enough clothing to be warm during the winter, a host of conditions. Myself and Commissioner met with some of the sheriff staff, Commander Montoya, over CRDF, Commander Macias, who was our liaison at CB's Civil Rank Commission, and Commander Alba, to discuss many of these issues. And I think it's important to note specifically the issue of culture that we have determined has gotten worse at CRDF over the last year. And we asked the sheriffs, what have you seen to be the most effective in dealing with problematic patterns and culture behavior? Their response was that they would investigate complaints. And it's worth noting that an investigation was opened up on one of the deputies that several of the women in CRDF have complained about for over a year. That investigation was initiated a year ago, and as of April of our meeting with the sheriffs, it had not been completed. The sheriffs mentioned that they would exact discipline where necessary, they would rotate officers, and that Commander Alba himself would walk the jails and talk to staff and people inside. And it feels important to say that while I appreciate the willingness of Commander Alba to walk the facilities themselves, we know deputies will perform when they need to. We know deputy gangs will undermine leadership when they feel inclined to. We know that women will not feel inclined to trust senior officers, even if they are claiming to be separate from the people that wear the same uniform as them. The folks who regularly taunt them saying, nothing will change, and they say that with confidence. The Citizens Commission on Jail Violence recommended rotating officers a decade ago. Sheriff Baca discussed hiring senior leaders to increase management efficacy to deal with culture a decade ago. And yet, a line being drawn between Nina in 2015, Robin in 2020, Miss F just a few months ago is alarmingly clear and intact. These conditions are in fact inhumane, incompatible with human life and are driving people into poor health, poor mental health, and are separating them from their communities. I want to close by just offering a recommendation that I think is important. The Civilian Oversight Commission has taken some courageous, correct, and common sense positions on many issues, including investigating deputy gangs, including taking a vote of no confidence on the previous sheriff, including in 2019 approving a resolution stating that the county should not move forward with building another women's jail, which we now know would have been a disaster. It is my recommendation that the Civilian Oversight Commission continue to do so by approving a resolution that echoes the chorus amongst multiple county entities, including the Department of Health Services, Correctional Health Services, members of the Sheriff's Department themselves, the Board of Supervisors, and certainly the community, a resolution that would say that the jails must be depopulated. A resolution that would echo the federal judge who was presiding over the DOJ hearings, who in fact referenced the county's Men's Central Jail closure report and referenced that not enough had been done. A resolution that would urge the board to emphasize decarceration and take heed of that very closure report's emphasis on the need to depopulate CRDF as a necessary mechanism of closing Men's Central Jail. Such a resolution, I believe, would be a meaningful, responsive, and necessary display of the Civilian Oversight Commission's authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Anthony. Now we'll hear from the Los Angeles County Office of Inspector General, Monitor Investigator Andre Harmandjian, and Chief Deputy Dara Williams. Please take it away, Andre.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andre Harmandjian, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a monitor with the Office of Inspector General. With me here today is Dara Williams, who serves as the Chief Deputy. We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this panel. As part of the OIG's Custody Oversight Branch, OIG staff regularly conduct site visits to all LASD jail facilities to monitor conditions of confinement, as well as identify systemic issues. We also attend various LASD meetings, and in addition to that, the general public can also file complaints with our office, which are forwarded to the Department for Investigation. The OIG monitors these complaints to ensure that investigations are completed. Much of the information shared here today were obtained through these different various channels, and I will be focusing on some of the common issues and frustrations experienced by people confined in the Los Angeles County jail facilities. Starting with general facility issues, the OIG receives a high volume of facility maintenance complaints. These complaints include inoperable toilets and sinks, limited access or no access to either hot or cold water, mold in cells and bath areas, broken telephones, broken in-cell light fixtures, and infestations, which more recently there was such as gnats and cockroaches. OIG staff have found that oftentimes several work orders are placed for the same issue. Maintenance orders generally take a long time to address, though. In our experience, line staff are good about submitting the maintenance requests on behalf of confined people, but it takes a while for maintenance to get around to them. Moving on to cleanliness. Cleanliness really varies widely between facilities and even between different areas within the same facility. Inmate workers, who are commonly referred to as trustees, are regularly seen cleaning common areas of the facilities and assisting staff with various responsibilities, such as handing out toilet paper and distributing food. However, trustees have expressed concerns about not being able to keep up with cleaning and collecting trash due to the number of people confined in the facilities and the limited number of trustees. The department also utilizes civilian cleaning crews in certain facilities to assist with the cleaning. Two specific examples that I want to share today pertain to, the first example pertains to NCCF, where the OIG receives a high volume of complaints regarding the lack of available cleaning supplies, and where confined people actually regularly request mops, brooms, and cleaning solutions to keep areas clean, but at times are denied access to these supplies. One issue that has been brought to our attention more recently is that when mops are provided to a pod at NCCF, they're not regularly being rinsed before being passed on to the next pod. So as a result, the same mop is being handed to the next pod without being cleaned. The mop gets dirty after a couple rounds and thus is not cleaning adequately. The next example, for Twin Towers Correctional Facility houses a large population of individuals with severe mental illnesses and high observation housing. This presents unique challenges to ensuring that housing units remain clean. For example, OIG staff recently identified an individual in high observation housing who had not had a cell clean for 27 days. The cell was full of milk and juice cartons, trash from meals, feces, and urine. Deputy personnel stated that the individual refused to give up his trash, was hostile, and that he did not want to engage with deputies. After discussing this matter with the department, the individual was eventually moved to another cell. However, this is not an uncommon example. According to policy, when an individual does become uncooperative, deputies are required to make every effort to gain cooperation. If they continue to refuse, the watch commander should be notified, and all other efforts shall be made to obtain cooperation. The OIG has found that this process is not followed consistently and that individuals are left in dirty cells at times for weeks. Lastly, on the cleanliness point, OIG staff have also observed trustees in hazmat style attires, what it seems to be, cleaning cells that actually contain bodily fluids, such as urine and feces. Next, I want to move on to just to discuss some of the food requirements. And under Title 15 department policy, meals are to be served 3 times a day, and at least one of these meals must include hot food. Over the past few years, the department has vastly expanded the variety of food that are offered throughout the facilities. Most recently, last week, there was, just for example, at CRDF, they were provided, confined people there were provided for breakfast, cereal, milk, bread, 2 slices of bread and peanut butter jelly sandwich. For lunch, they were offered a bologna sandwich, carrots, pretzel snacks, and orange juice. And lastly, for dinner, they were offered bean burrito, chili beans, green peas, salad, chocolate milk, and sweet cornbread. However, the OIG does continue to receive a number of complaints regarding food and diets, which include foul odors. OIG staff have personally witnessed rotten eggs, bologna, and chicken, as well as moldy bread. Another common complaint is the untimely distribution of meals. On top of that, small portions. And just on a related note, on the small portions, we also get a lot of complaints about the high commissary prices for food, and which makes it difficult for a lot of people in custody to supplement their county meals with commissary due to those high prices. In addition to that, we also get quite a few complaints about cold hot meals. Most facilities are currently using paper trays to serve food, which does appear to impact the temperature of the food, and as they're being served, and appears to become cold by the time the food arrives to the person in custody. Incorrect packaging of special diets, we also do receive complaints regarding that. For example, OIG staff have witnessed peanut butter sandwiches in bags that were labeled as special diets with no peanut butter. And lastly, the OIG has received complaints that sometimes they are not provided with meals due to inmate workers mishandling the count, leaving some people without a meal for that certain day. Next, I want to move on to just some of the common complaints that we receive while monitoring. First, I discuss maintenance issues. Next, sanitation, access to adequate hygiene products. While the department does provide soap and toilet paper, confined people often express frustration with access to hygiene products. The next is the temperature within the facilities. The OIG has also recorded temperatures as low as 58 degrees in the IRC during the winter months. The department only at this time provides thermal clothing or long sleeve clothing to certain populations that are housed within the facility. As such, many people in custody, especially during the winter months, express being extremely cold. Next, we also do get a lot of complaints regarding the mail. These really range from issues regarding like not receiving mail or return mail not being sent back. And lastly, unanswered healthcare requests or grievance forms. It does appear as though some, at times, grievances are taking a while, if not months, to actually obtain any type of response. At this time, I will now turn it over to Dara for additional remarks.
Good morning, everyone. My remarks are more overarching, and I'd like to start with complaints. One of the things that the Office of Inspector General has noticed with regard to complaints, and I'm not necessarily talking about complaints that can be remedied right away, but true complaints about systemic issues. They are mostly when they are investigated thoroughly, they are mostly unfounded or simply an employee could have done better. And we mentioned, or someone mentioned, discipline of the deputies. You know, most of the cases where the complaints that come through the system, in most cases, deputies are not going to be dismissed. And the purpose of the disciplinary system is to make people's conduct better, much like our, entire system of incarceration is not necessarily designed to be, but that's the hope we can achieve that someday. And when the department fails to discipline the people in their own ranks in order to correct behavior, in order to improve conduct, in order to improve culture, that's an incredibly difficult problem to overcome, because there is a lack of discipline for the deputies who engage in behavior that's unacceptable. Moving on to the conditions of confinement. In 2021, there is a JFA report that discusses solutions to address jail overcrowding and the deplorable conditions in the jails. Those solutions were in lieu of building a new facility, and those solutions were designed to close Men's Central Jail. Some of the solutions are sort of addressed in a way that they appear to be temporary solutions. But we all know that it is impossible for a new facility to be built anytime in the near future. And so we have to insist that these temporary solutions be implemented immediately, because the Constitution doesn't say we eventually need to have constitutional conditions of confinement. The Constitution says we need acceptable, safe, sanitary conditions now, not 10 years from now, not 3 weeks from now, but now. So we need to insist that the solutions in the JFA report be explored in order to create sanitary, livable conditions where people are getting adequate mental health treatment, where people are getting adequate medical treatment, and where people are not only have access to rehabilitative services, but are given rehabilitative services. The only way to achieve this is by reducing the jail population. We've seen time and time again that we don't have the staff, we don't have the facilities, we just do not have what it takes to incarcerate this many people and give them the conditions and services that they need. We need to shut down Men's Central Jail. There is simply no way to make that facility better. It's not going to happen. And there are nearly 7,000 people in custody awaiting trial. It is without a doubt, there are some of those 7,000 people who are not a danger to the community if they are released from custody. So we need to focus on ways to move forward to insist that the Sheriff's Department use its authority to release people. There are government code sections, there's the Rutherford litigation. They have the ability to do it. They just need to decide who they are going to release in order to get to a population that is acceptable so that we can meet the conditions of the United States Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre and Dara. Now we'll hear from Assistant Sheriff Aloma, who leads the Sheriff's Department's custody operations.
Good morning. Sergio Aloma, I'm the Assistant Sheriff of Custody Operations for the LA County Sheriff's Department. And I just want to say that I want to thank the panelists for their comments. They are heard loud and clear. As you know, here in custody operations, we have 8 facilities throughout Los Angeles County. I know a couple of them have been mentioned already: Men's Central Jail, CRDF for women, and the Twin Towers Correctional Facility here in the downtown jail complex, which also includes the Inmate Reception Center. We, of course, also have the Pitches Detention Center in the Castaic area in northern LA County, which has North Facility, South Facility, the North County Correctional Facility, and also Pitches Detention Center East, which has been closed for the most part for quite some time. It's been under renovation. We do have a small population of fire camp folks that occupy East on that work program. I say that all to say that it is a very complex system. As of today, we have 13,500 men and women in our custody. Our count has been trending down due to a number of factors. But again, I say that to say that the comments made by the panel today are appreciated. We hear you loud and clear. We know that with a system as large as ours that houses people, men and women, we take that obligation seriously. I appreciate the comments as it relates to command staff who walk the facilities, who talk to individuals incarcerated in our facilities, as well as our staff. Our staff, I'll talk about them for a second, the deputy sheriffs, custody assistants, and our partners at Correctional Health Services. I think given the challenges that we have with our population, with our facilities, do outstanding work. Can it be better? Yes. Is there room for improvement? Of course there is. We employ human beings who are not perfect and who do make mistakes, who through human error probably can do a better job at times. But I think day in and day out, our deputy sheriffs, our custody assistants, our partners at Correctional Health Services are doing outstanding work. Again, I'm not making excuses. I believe that we can always do better. I've heard examples that to me are extremely concerning, and that I expect where there is misconduct, unethical behavior, or again, behavior that violates our policies, that those instances be investigated thoroughly. We have a disciplinary process just for that reason. Accountability of the men and women that work our jails, as well as accountability of myself and our command staff, is paramount. And we work very hard on a daily basis with the Office of Inspector General and with our oversight groups to ensure that we're addressing any concerns that, whether it be our incarcerated population, their families, or anyone else that brings those concerns to our attention, or that we see for ourselves, that they're addressed, and they're addressed immediately. However, I will say that there are challenges. We have aging facilities, as everyone here has acknowledged. Our newest facility in our system is 27 years old. That's the Twin Towers Correctional Facility. As we discuss Men's Central Jail, a facility that this year turns 60 years old. Again, not making excuses, but just saying that to say that the infrastructure itself is a challenge. We have our Facility Services Bureau that works very hard on a daily basis to address concerns related to plumbing, related to lighting, or other issues in the jail that are either reported by those incarcerated in our jails, or that are observed by our employees and are reported either through the general process or even through the emergency repair process. Again, I appreciate the comments made by the ACLU, by the Civil Brand Commission, by the OIG. We appreciate the fact that all of you have essentially, I feel more so it's a partnership where You are in our jails on a regular basis, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the fact that you bring these issues to our attention. You know, what I submit to you is that I expect that when these issues are brought to our attention, that we act on them and that we address them, and that we address them appropriately, not only for, you know, a particular individual that may be experiencing these things, but for our population as a whole, and also for our employees who work in these facilities every day. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to address you today, to hear your comments and concerns and comments that come from people you have interacted with in our facilities. And I sincerely appreciate the Civilian Oversight Commission for allowing us the opportunity to share today and to have these conversations and address these very important issues.
Okay, that concludes this portion. I'd like to thank all the speakers here today for providing important information and insight regarding the dire conditions inside the jails. This is clearly a complex situation that requires our time, attention, discussion, and action to ensure that the Sheriff's Department, and from what I heard from the speakers, Correctional Health Services, is providing appropriate care for people in custody. Before we jump into questions from the public, I'd like to ask the panelists a few questions. My first question will be directed towards Assistant Sheriff Aloma. So we heard a lot about the facilities and cleanliness across the system. Who is responsible for making the jails the jails that are properly clean so people don't get, you know, spider bites or having to, you know, live in a dirty cell, dirty dorm, or a shower that's not working or rusty?
Sure. So that question. It's a multitude of things that have to happen. So first and foremost, our staff that work in the jails on a daily basis that are assigned to those housing areas, the expectation is that they, while they're doing, for example, their safety checks of those housed in their housing facilities, that they're also inspecting those housing facilities for these type of things, both visually and also listening to those incarcerated individuals who report whether it's plumbing issues, cleanliness issues. Andre from the OIG mentioned those individuals that, you know, may not want to come out of their cells that require cleanliness and the protocol to make that happen. In addition to those things, we have, you know, we provide each housing area with we're supposed to provide each housing area with cleaning solutions, with things to clean with. You know, Mr. Harmandjian mentioned NCCF and some of the challenges there that we need to look at because each housing area is provided with cleaning solutions and tools to clean their individual housing areas. However, we also have work crews comprised of incarcerated people who are inmate work programs. We have contracts with Servicon. They clean mainly clinical areas, holding cells in the inmate reception center, even the hallway between Twin Towers and Men's Central Jail. And then in terms of the internal issues with, for example, plumbing, I mentioned earlier, Facility Services Bureau. They are our sole provider for LA County Sheriff's Department facilities, and which obviously includes the jails, for those major repairs of, say, for example, plumbing issues, elevators, escalators that may be in need of repair. That is all handled through Facility Services Bureau. And we have a process in place through our staff where they make notifications for general or standard repairs of facility issues, and then they also have the ability to make emergency requests for repairs both during the day and after hours.
Thank you. The next question is with regards to efforts to provide rehabilitation programs within the jail system. Despite the challenges that we're hearing, there are people that are serving their sentences, and I believe there was a time where access to education programs were prevalent. Access to a library to read a book, or to participate in religious services, or speak to a chaplain. Are those programs readily available across the system? Can you update on where those are at?
Right. So, one thing to note as it relates to programming, during COVID, a lot of our program ceased due to the pandemic. What we're seeing here in the last few months is that those programs are starting to pick back up again. However, we've always had, as you know, our education-based incarceration program, or EBI as it's referred to. You made reference to it in your opening. That is handled through our Inmate Services Bureau. All our facilities have EBI available to the incarcerated population. Regardless, it's voluntary, as you know. We provide GED and high school diploma programs. And then just in recent months, we've partnered with College of the Canyons for them to come in to our facilities in North Los Angeles County at the Pitch Detention Center, and at CRDF. They offer associate's degree type courses or college courses for those who wish to participate in those. Typically, due to our transitory population, we haven't seen people complete their AA degree, although that's the goal. However, it does give them a start in that regard. So that those are available regardless of the population. However, depending on security levels and classifications, there are some individuals who may not be able to participate in group educational programs, and have to those programs have to be modified for them, depending again on their security and classification levels. But again, the programs are voluntary, but they're offered to the entire population.
Thank you. And then my next question is for Melissa. When you were talking about the body cavity searches and the technology, the body scanning, I didn't hear it. I may have missed it. Did you say that the scanning machines are not in operation, or they're in operation but they're not readily used?
The OIG might have better information on kind of how they're being used, because I know that they do monitor when they're brought online. What I know is that the whole purpose for starting the body scanner program in 2012 was to largely eliminate the searches. So my concern is that they exist now, at least the OIG's reported that they've been rolled out, I think, at all the facilities. But it appears that they haven't had the impact that they were supposed to have when they were first recommended and funded.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Garcia, if I could respond to that.
Sure.
So Melissa's correct. We do have body scanners, and that was the purpose of deploying them or installing them here in our facilities. However, as she correctly pointed out, they were installed in 2012. We have not replaced those body scanners, to my knowledge. So like with any technology, they become dated and aren't necessarily functioning in the way that we'd want them to now. Hence why, unfortunately and sadly, we see, individuals that come through those scanners and nevertheless are able still to bring in contraband to our facilities. The scenarios that Melissa pointed out are unacceptable, and we do have policies as it relates to visual cavity searches. We're happy to to look into any complaints in relation to any violations of that policy. But there are visual cavity searches at times that are necessary based on a number of factors, including the safety and security of those that are housed in our facilities. However, we expect that those searches are done within our policies and that they're closely monitored by supervisors on the line in our facilities. We have made body scanners part of our budgetary ask for this upcoming budget cycle. But like with everything else, you know, there's competing priorities, but we have recognized that we do need to replace the aging technology that we have as it relates to body scanners in our jails.
Thank you for that. Now, as we move forward, I would like to offer the opportunity for any of the panelists, if there's any questions that you have for any of the other speakers that we've heard this morning.
Mr. Garcia, this is Commissioner Clayton-Johnson, a civil brand. I wanted to respond to the piece around EBI, the education-based incarceration, because I think sometimes in these conversations what happens is we hear what is offered, we hear what the policy is, but I think how it plays out in the actual facilities and in the lives of the people inside is very different. The Civil Brand Commission was directed by the board to look into EBI, and we interviewed over 814 people across the various jail facilities, and included CRDF, Twin Towers, Men's Central Jail, Pitches. One of the things that we found is that 89% of respondents were very interested in receiving education services and support services. However, access and accessibility are two different things, and eligibility and accessibility are two different things. And so even for folks who are eligible, ran into barriers. And so with regard to the question of access, despite the high level of interest, 71% of respondents said there was never or rarely any classes made available to them. And for folks who were actually made it into classes, 56% of respondents said programs were canceled without any good reason or explanation, somewhat or very frequently. And so I think it's important to hone in, because education-based incarceration gets talked about a lot, on what it actually is looking like for people's access, and for people who are eligible, even they run into a lot of barriers of benefiting from that actual program.
If I could just add an additional few comments to that as well. We hear the same type of sentiment from people in custody as well, regarding like those who are able to get into the program or are eligible for the programs are very happy to have made it in, and want to stay in the program. But we hear a lot of concerns with those that aren't eligible, who express the desire to be a part of those or to engage in those EBI programs but aren't able to. Also, just wanted to make a comment regarding library services. We do get a lot of requests from people in custody regarding just the need for more books. They've read through the library that is available to them or the books that are available to them, and they just more additional books would just help them fill some of the time, help them learn a little, or keep them engaged. So that was one of the issues that we do continue to hear.
Thank you, Andre. Which raised the question for me, and I'll direct it towards Assistant Sheriff Aloma. There was a recent a clinical social work colleague of mine had done a book drive and received an enormous amount of books to be donated, and I believe the Board of Supervisors made a motion and to look at, I guess, well, you know, the process of getting those books into the facility for people incarcerated. would that type of donation type of project add to the library, the existing library?
Yes, no, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments about libraries and education, because that's something that personally to me is very important, particularly as it relates to an incarcerated population. Yes, we welcome books. As you mentioned, Supervisor Horvath passed a motion recently related to the donation of books to our jails, which we gladly accepted and appreciate. Those donations are happening as we speak. It's being managed through our Inmate Services Bureau and being distributed to the facilities so that we could have, a fresh supply of books, if you will, in our different facilities for folks to choose from. Another thing that we're looking at is the introduction, at least on a pilot program, and this is still very much in the early phases of its concept, but tablets for our incarcerated population. We believe that a lot of these things, I think, can be improved through technology and the use of tablets to give folks the opportunity to participate in educational programs or to have books available to them via a tablet. Again, we're still very much in the very early stages of discussing that and seeing how that would look like and rolling it out as a pilot. So we're still some months at least away, but we've consulted with other jail facilities that do have these tablet programs and meeting with vendors to see, again, what it would look like and how we can accomplish that with our population, both from the standpoint of having the ability to read books and to engage more with our educational opportunities. But in terms of the book donations, again, that is being handled through Inmate Services Bureau, and we are in the process of getting those donations. We had a library at Men's Central Jail, for example, that was shut down during COVID. That is, we are reopening again as we speak over there, so that those that are incarcerated there have, again, more access to books to choose from.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Dara.
Well, what I would like to suggest is that the department make it clear where the books can be donated, because I think that there's a lot of people who would donate books, but I, for instance, have no idea where I would donate books. And so if the department, and it is in fact part of Supervisor Horvath's motion that there be an analysis of whether that the department can make that information readily available to the public via its website. The motion was on February 28th, so I don't know if the report back is done yet. The department had 90 days to do that. But I would just strongly suggest that that information be made available to the public so that people know where to do it, because obviously that will increase the number of donations the department gets.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's now time to move to our next portion of today's session. And now we would like to open this up to the live Q&A portion. Jennifer, are there any community questions for this panel?
We do have a couple of folks queued up for questions already. But just as a reminder, if you are logged into WebEx to ask a question, please raise your hand. If you have called in, please press *3 to get in queue to be unmuted. I will unmute you when it's your turn so that you can ask your question. If your question is for a specific panelist, please feel free to state that. And to ask a question, you must be logged into the WebEx or phoned into the meeting. If you are commenting on the Facebook Live video, your question may be read to the host, by the host. And before we begin, we do have a quick announcement in Spanish. Eric?
Buenos días. Si desea hacer una pregunta en general o a cualquier de los panelistas, seleccione el símbolo de la mano y alguien le tocará cuando sea su turno. Si está hablando por teléfono o escuchando por teléfono, empuje la estrella y el 3 y alguien se comunicará con nosotros. Gracias.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Eric. And as a reminder, this is for Q&A. So these are questions. It's not public comment. So there will not be a timer on the screen. And our first question will come from Irma Cooper. A notification has been sent. If you can acknowledge that to unmute yourself. Irma Cooper. There you go. Please go ahead with your question, Irma.
Can you hear me?
We do, yeah.
Good morning, and I want to thank all the panelists. A lot of valuable information has been shared, but my question is to Mr. Aloma, because I have some concerns about, number one, what actions have you taken to improve the disciplinary process to change the culture and inappropriate behaviors among the staff? And then number two would be the commissary markup. If you can check into that to see whether or not the markup is needed, or, you know, at a reasonable price for the inmate population so that they can afford the items. And then the third question is, why are the jails exempt from being inspected by the public health service like nursing homes? Because most of the nursing homes, if they had the issues that the jails currently have, they would have been on the news, they would have received a fine, and they would have been shut down. So if you can answer those questions, I would appreciate it.
Okay, I'll take the first question, which I believe had to do with discipline and what are we doing to address those issues within our jail system with our employees. Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, any of these policy violations, any unethical behavior on the part of our employees, any violations of policy are not tolerated. And we expect everyone up and down our chain of command, including myself, to be held accountable to ensure that our employees, both our professional staff and our sworn personnel, are adhering to, you know, their code of ethics and to the policies of the LA County Sheriff's Department. I have personally, I've been in this position for about 4 months or so. I attend, once a deputy, for example, graduates from the Deputy Academy, they go through several weeks of jail operations school. I have, since the beginning of the year, been attending every one of those jail courses and speaking to our newly hired deputy sheriffs. And we talk about expectations. We talk about what is expected of them when they come to work in our jails, and what's expected of them in terms of their professional conduct, their ethical behavior, their moral behavior related to their duties and responsibilities as a deputy sheriff working not only for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, but for our jails, and the consequences if they do not. We have very open and frank discussions related to the use of force, and a number of other issues, how they treat the incarcerated population. One thing that you know, I tell them often is that we expect them to treat people that are incarcerated no different than if it was a family member who was incarcerated, and how they would want them treated. So in other words, treat people the way you would want to be treated. We have very frank conversations. That messaging is also echoed by command staff at their facilities. However, if those things and that type of messaging isn't working in terms of what our expectations are, and our expectations aren't made clear, and policies are violated, then the expectation is that discipline is a remedy to change behavior and change culture. Not only in our jail facilities, but in our department. In terms of your question related to commissary, so I appreciate the question. That's one that comes up often, and as it should. We have a vendor that provides commissary to our incarcerated population. Their prices are checked on a regular basis. We expect them, and by the way, the Sheriff's Department does not set the prices. It is the vendor. However, we expect that the vendor provide, anytime there's a price increase in any of the vending items, that they provide a justification for that increase. And one of the things that we require of them is that they check those prices in the community with at least 3 community vendors, so that the prices are comparable to what is being spent in the community. So that is something that we are very sensitive to. We understand that commissary items are very popular with our population, and that the prices need to be comparable to what is being spent in the communities. And then in terms of inspections, the jails are inspected regularly by the BSCC. That's the Board of State Corrections that oversees both prisons and jail facilities in the state of California. And then, of course, really beyond, it shouldn't take, I think, a governing body to alert us to conditions that are unacceptable. We expect that to happen on a daily basis by our very employees, and as well as the panelists that come to visit our jails. When they see things, when our employees see things, they're expected to document them, report them, and then address it. However, I will admit that it is a challenge with our facilities and the size of our facilities. Not making excuses, but it is something that we do address, and that we expect to be addressed on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And thank you for your question, Irma. Next, we will move on to Kathleen Hernandez. I've sent a request for you to unmute. So Kathleen, if you can acknowledge, and it looks like you're unmuted. Please go ahead, Kathleen.
Hi, can you hear me?
We do, yes. Please go
great.
ahead.
Thank you. So I've listened to Mr. Aloma speaking about how he has no excuses, but this is an ongoing, as Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson referred, this has been going on for 20 years. So this system of this culture, this systemic, horrific experience that people have, and this unhumane treatment is ongoing, and obviously the system doesn't work. So I'd like to ask Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson, could you speak to other more humane solutions for people that find themselves in cages? Is there a community solution? Is there a way for all of us to take responsibility for this and to provide wraparound services? I also, in reference to releasing 7,000 people from the jails, but not having housing for them, not having a community for them to go to. So I think if we keep looking at archaic ways of solving these unsolvable problems in jails, I mean, it's just archaic, it's medieval. So if you could speak to that, and if you could also speak to the recent Tuesday decision by the Board of Supervisors to now staff juvenile facilities with sheriffs. After hearing all of this, I'm highly concerned to put the same culture in with children, and children don't belong in jails. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I certainly share your concerns. I think a couple things happened on Tuesday that I think start to point at the direction that we need to go in. And for one, as you named, yes, jails are archaic, and the conditions that we're talking about are not unique to Sheriff Aloma, Sheriff Villanueva, Sheriff McDonald, or Sheriff Baca. And so What we know is that this hasn't worked, and it's part of the reason why community members in the county and all the major county departments came together and came up with a plan of what to do. And that plan is called the Care First, Jail Last Roadmap, and it provides a very clear step-by-step guide, policy, budgetary roadmap of what we can do at every single step in someone's arc through this system, from pre-police contact to pre-trial to sentencing to release. What are all things we can do to get people out, to make sure that they're healthier, to make sure that they're housed, and all those things? And that roadmap is something that we need to continue to push our board of supervisors to lean in on. And to that point, that is a roadmap that is investing in building community alternatives. And on Tuesday, one thing that happened is we saw Supervisor Mitchell and Supervisor Horvath advance a motion that was voted unanimously that would essentially direct our CEO to find money to expand our diversion capacity by 1,000 beds. You're talking about places, to the point of what they look like, places where people can be in a home with people who have similar experience, with clinicians and services on site. This is what we know works. The health outcomes, the recidivism outcomes are astronomically better than jails have ever produced. And on your second point, yes, I'm also concerned because, again, the cultural piece is the most difficult piece. And I named in my testimony that there have been attempts to address deputy culture and over the last 10 years. And the work by the Civilian Oversight Commission to investigate deputy gangs, I think, speaks to just how prevalent and dangerous that culture is. And I think moving folks from sheriff's department to probation, when there are hundreds of slots that are vacant in the probation department, which then begs the question of what burden that puts on the sheriff, and the sheriff can then call for more deputies to help fill that. I think it puts us in a dangerous cycle, a very, very dangerous cycle. And we heard today, certainly the community, certainly the OIG, certainly Correctional Health Services, certainly the federal judge saying the answer is depopulate, get services stood up, invest in communities, because what we're doing is not working. And that motion that passed on Tuesday is a step. It is not enough. I don't think it'll be enough to keep the county out of contempt, but it is a critical step that we have to keep building on.
Thank you for that answer, Mark Anthony. And we did have someone who sent in a question, so we'll take that really quick before we move to the next person. The question is from Cynthia, and it's to Assistant Sheriff Aloma. It is, how is the vendor selected to provide food for sale to the jail population? And can you share that vendor information with the public? And next we'll queue up Harmandjian for the next question. But Assistant Sheriff Aloma, if you could answer that question.
Yes, thank you. So the vendor is a contracted vendor, Keefe Commissary, and they are contracted by the county to provide services. They submit their contract to county council. It then goes to the board for review and approvals. And they are our contracted vendor with our jail system.
Great, thank you for that answer. And Harmandjian, you're unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, panelists, including my fellow Commissioner Luis Garcia, for today's presentation. I want to, in particular, thank Melissa Camacho for her presentation of the evidence of routine degradation and sexual harassment conditions in the strip searches and body cavity searches. And I also want to thank Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson for his revelations about the CRDF conditions that are dehumanizing and torturous, echoing the statements from Melissa Camacho and the findings presented here at this at today's webinar. I want to ask in particular, given that this is the 20th anniversary of the Prison Rape Elimination Act, this is the 20th anniversary year of that federal legislation's enactment, and an expansion of which was sponsored by then Senator, now President Biden. We have a significant milestone before us, but yet we have alarming evidence of conditions in facilities that, just to put a small wrinkle on this, sexual harassment and abuse of men in custody was a major motivator for the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Abuse, harassment, and sexual assault of women sadly gets ignored and normalized, but when it occurs against men, prompts lawmakers to action. And in particular, I want to thank Melissa Camacho for that evidence shared here that I believe needs to motivate the Sheriff's Department, as well as fellow members of the Civilian Oversight Commission, to act to eliminate the conditions that are causing sexual harassment and assault that extends beyond our jails and into our communities as a result of the behavior that is normalized there and inflicted by sheriff's deputies. So I want to ask Deputy Sheriff Aloma, what action can be taken to eliminate those conditions of unnecessary strip searches and body cavity searches, despite or to enhance the body scanners, and what concrete action can be taken to eliminate those conditions given this noteworthy milestone and the apparent backsliding by the county in allowing these conditions to persist. And I would just note the evidence of retaliation against Miss F, documented and described by Mark Anthony Clayton-Johnson here today, is an indicator of consciousness of guilt on the part of the deputies involved, and is alarming to me, and I believe my fellow commissioners here, about a climate of retaliation. What action will you take to eliminate these conditions and the retaliation that is being used to cover it up?
No, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your question and your comments. And I agree with you that any violations of PREA, anything that is done intentionally or outside of the law or policy that is demeaning or degrading towards our population is absolutely 100% unacceptable. That being said, that any violations of PREA we take seriously. They are investigated. We have a PREA coordinator and a PREA team that handles all PREA allegations here in Custody Division. The expectation is if there is an allegation, even an allegation of a policy violation or a violation of PREA, that it is thoroughly and comprehensively investigated. In terms of messaging and what we can do, we need to constantly message and brief to our people. And by I say people, all our employees, not only line level, but our management staff, our executive staff, that obviously violations of PREA shall not be tolerated. Acts of retaliation will not be tolerated and will be investigated and have to be dealt with if we find facts that support that these violations are happening or have happened, that discipline needs to be imposed in those cases where we find violations of our very own policies, whether it relates to PREA or any other policy violations that we find as it relates to visual cavity searches. Those things are what is expected and should be happening, and we need to make sure that we message that out. As you know, as an organization, we do have a constant influx of new employees, both at the line level as well as supervisory staff. So that's a message that has to be continuous and not just a one-time message.
Thank you for that, Assistant Sheriff Aloma. And Melissa, I see that your hand is raised. Would you like to add to that or ask an additional question?
I would. I'd like to add to it. I think one of the issues was highlighted by Dara, I believe, that grievances against staff are almost always found unfounded or conduct could be better. Our office has submitted at least 50 to 70 visual body cavity search complaints just in the last year. If the grievance system actually solved the problem would be solved. So I think both there's an issue with staff investigating themselves, particularly in situations like this, where it's always going to be the word of the incarcerated person against the word of the staff person. And so who's going to actually resolve that issue of credibility? Who's telling the truth? And so what really needs to be done is to, like the CCJV said, largely eliminate visual body cavity searches. You have to put an end to having so many opportunities for sexual harassment and sexual assault to be taking place.
Thank you for that. And before we go to the next question, does any other panelist have any additional thoughts or comments on that? Please go ahead, Dara. Oh,
thank you, Ms. Camacho. I just want to say one quick thing, which is that the Office of Inspector General has conducted some PREA audits, and we can't speak about the audits before we release the findings, but our first report is due on May 12th. And so there will be a series of PREA audits that will be reported on by our office between now and July. Andre can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there were 4 stations.
great. Thank you very much for that, Dara. And before we move to the next question, will come from Michelle Infante, but we did have one that was written in, and it says from Christina, mental health is a huge concern. What percentage of the population in the jail system has been diagnosed with a mental health condition? So Assistant Sheriff Aloma, I would believe this would be for you. And the second part of that question is custody trained to identify those people with mental health conditions and manage them appropriately?
Thank you. So that's a very important question, and the reason I say that is because mental illness, as we see in our jail community, has been growing over the years, exponentially. So just over the last 10 years, we've seen an increase from about 17% of our population about 10 years ago to about 40% today. So that's both men and women. However, the percentage is much higher in our women's facility than it is in our men's, but the average is about 40% in our population. And that's something that not only in LA County, but we're seeing nationally in terms of trends of those suffering from mental illness who are incarcerated in our jails and prisons. In terms of how deputies are trained to deal with the mentally ill, we have, as part of our jail operations training that they receive de-escalation or divert training, which is de-escalation and verbal communications training, where they have clinicians that teach a portion of that course that assist them in de-escalating situations, what the expectations are, and some of the tools necessary to communicate effectively with the mentally ill. And then, of course, additional training that happens as refresher training is offered for divert on a regular basis during their time here assigned to custody division.
Thank you for that. And as I mentioned, the next question will come from Michelle Infante. Following Michelle, we will hear a question from Bernita Walker. So Michelle, please go ahead. Oh, it looks like you just muted yourself. Hold on, let's get another acknowledgement, Michelle. Okay, please go ahead, Michelle.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Infante. I'm with Dignity and Power Now. I have 2 addresses I'd like to make. One to Assistant Sergio Aloma. Your complaint process is trash. When people that are incarcerated, when they go to file a complaint, they file it and it never is received. I believe you have a limit on the amount of complaints that an inmate can file. And it's a problem because when I go down and I outreach, every person that I speak to that says that they file a complaint says that the deputies come and pick them up and they put them in the trash. And they don't have a problem doing that in front of the inmates who are filing a complaint against the very deputies that we're talking about here. One of the complaints was Ruby Beltran. And I know you know this because we had a conversation about it. She made complaints and she actually had the civil brand come in. And while one of the commissioners were there, 2 commissioners were there, your deputies actually had thrown Ruby Beltran's complaints into the trash. And the civil brand asked them to retrieve them and give them back to her so that they could be given to the commissioners. And then I'd like to also address Dara Williams. Dara Williams, your OIG's office.
I'm sorry to interrupt really quick, Michelle. If you could just be sure to wrap it up, your comment with questions.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely. So to both of them, it's going to be, what are you going to do about the problematic employees that you carry? Dara Williams had Eric Bates, who went in and saw Ruby Beltran. And he was questioning her when she was saying that she was pregnant. He was questioning her, telling her that she probably wasn't pregnant. It was no big deal because she lost. It wasn't like the baby was lost at 7 months. So what happens after that is retaliation and harassment. So I'd like to know what both of you guys are going to do with your problematic employees that keep our inmates from being able to tell the truth and to receive help when something like this is going on.
Thank you for your question, Michelle. I'm not sure if either of you would like to speak about problematic employees.
Well, the only thing I will say is this, is that, you know, I certainly understand that Ms. Infante is sometimes not satisfied with the answers that she gets, but there are reasons why, for instance, the Office of Inspector General cannot share certain information that's confidential about incarcerated persons. And so, you know, their anecdotal evidence provides us with insight into what's happening in the county jails, but it's not the same as, you know, systemic audits or investigations. And sometimes when anecdotal evidence is conveyed, it's not the entire story. And so it makes it difficult, you know, for the Sheriff's Department and for the Office of Inspector General, because sometimes we can't share the rest of that story. And so we have to simply tell the person, you know, who's complaining that we've looked into it, or the Sheriff's Department's looked into it, and that we have done all we can. And so it's important, I think, that the public understand that there are people involved, and those people have a right to privacy. And even if those people are saying certain things, if it doesn't exactly, you know, if the entire story doesn't necessarily match a narrative, we still can't share that entire story. And I'm sorry that we can't, but we can't. And so I do agree that the complaint system is very flawed. I agree that the complaint system mostly finds that, you know, at most, employees' conduct could be better, that there's insufficient, I think that, you know, we can call it discipline, but we can also call it correction, right? Because really what we're trying to achieve here is better behavior. And I do agree that the system is flawed in getting to better behavior. And it might be a good time for me to say one thing, I think, in response to this, and also in response to something that Assistant Sheriff Aloma said, is that the deputies are told to go into the jail and have empathy and behave ethically and behave morally. But the problem is that the conditions of the jails are not one that encourage empathy. The conditions are such that the department has exhausted everyone's empathy. The deputies have a hard time feeling empathetic when there's so many problems all day long, every day. Certainly the persons in custody are not empathetic to anything because they're being mistreated. So when the department sends a message that the department is not empathetic and then tells its employees to be empathetic, it's mixed messaging. When the department doesn't control when the department has unsanitary conditions, when they serve cold food, when they serve moldy bread, when they don't give people cleaning supplies, when the conditions are unsanitary, when they refuse to give people who are cold thermal clothing, when in fact every deputy can put on an extra layer,
but the department has made a decision that they're not going to give people thermal clothing. They're depriving the deputies of the ability, even the ability, to be empathetic to their population. So we can talk about telling people to be empathetic, to be moral, and to be ethical, but when the conditions are such that you don't allow your employees to actually be empathetic, we have a big problem.
Thank you for that, Dara. And Assistant Sheriff Aloma, I didn't know if you wanted to respond before we go to the next question.
No, I just, in response to Ms. Infante's concerns and her question, I appreciate her comments and her question. I've spoken to Ms. Infante previously at previous COC meetings, and again, I appreciate her bringing our attention to this issue. You know, all I can say to her in response to her comments is that the behavior that she described is obviously unacceptable. When you talk about, you know, complaints being thrown in the garbage in front of monitors, again, that's something that we expect is addressed and dealt with by the facility, by management there, by leadership there, and you know, again, I know that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the grievance process, the complaint process as it relates to our population and its effectiveness. It is, you know, probably not a perfect system. However, we handle thousands of complaints every year. We address them, and we have staff that's dedicated to doing just that. We take them seriously. Another point that I wanted to make is as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at a tablet solution for our population. We're hoping that loading inmate complaints and grievances via that platform will also improve our effectiveness in reviewing and addressing inmate complaints and grievances. So again, thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Great, thank you. And next we'll hear from Bernita Walker. Following Bernita will be Maria S. So Bernita, you're unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I greet you all. I am a retired deputy sheriff for the County of Los Angeles. Even though it was a long time ago, I retired in 1978. I did do my time when I first started at Sybil brand. And when you talk about all the things that are going on now, I am in shock. It is very, very painful for me to listen to how the custody housing has gotten where it is. But I do understand the mental health, and that's really what I want to ask about. Is there any type of movement to work with the families of these individuals who have mental health issues, instead of working in the silo of just the custody department, extending that to the Department of Mental Health, so that we can work together and start addressing these issues that bring individuals to the jail system? Thank you.
Thank you, Bernita, and I'll open that up to any of the panelists who would like to respond.
I guess I'll start. Thank you for the question, and congratulations to you on a long and healthy retirement from the department. We certainly appreciate your service. As far as involving the families, absolutely. You know, and I'm kind of stuck here because, you know, mental illness and the care of our mental ill population is obviously handled by Correctional Health Services, our partners there. However, you know, we welcome interaction from the families that have concerns. I think that it's been mentioned earlier as it relates to community beds that may be more suitable for that population. We are certainly, you know, open to that. However, you know, there are certain challenges there as it relates to the release of acute or subacute folks to community beds that, again, can provide the type of services that they need. Meanwhile, here in our custody facilities, I know that our partners with Correctional Health Services and the mental health staff there are working very hard every day with a very challenging population that we have in our system.
May I quickly say this? Is there any work that you're doing also with the diversionary program that has been set up through the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, the DA's office, and the City Attorney's office?
Yes, and thank you for that. Absolutely. So I think what you're describing is a partnership with our justice partners, the courts, our DA's office, public defender, alternate public defender, with a department of the county called referred to as JCOD, the Justice Care and Opportunities Department, which oversees ATI, ODR, which is Alternatives to Incarceration,
Right.
and Offices of Diversion and Reentry, and all of us working together collaboratively to divert those people that can be diverted to community programs that may be more suitable to treat them and their mental illness.
I represent the Justice Equity Committee for CRESLA, which is the Community Response Services of South Los Angeles, and also LACA, LAACHA, Los Angeles Alliance for Community Health and Aging. And so I'm asking all of these questions because we're all involved with that, and the county needs to be involved with that, and definitely the department, as I said. I thank you so much. I'll get off of the line now. Thank you so much for and just think about what I've asked, please.
Thank you for your comments, and we appreciate your continued service.
Yes, thank you for that, Bernita. I'll just, before we go to the last person who has signed up for a comment, Maria S., do any of the other panelists want to chime in? It looks like Mark Anthony, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
I appreciate the question that Bernita just raised in terms of diversion. And I think it's important that we're really, again, clear about how diversion plays out in practice and what is actually happening. The Office of Diversion and Reentry is an important mechanism to get people out. But even they have said that the folks who have benefited the least from diversion from our jails are Black people, including Black women. And they have made some concerted efforts to try and figure out how to address that. I mean, we talk about the 7,000 folks in the facility that could be in the facilities that could be diverted. Yes, we're going to have to set up diversion. Yes, we're going to have to set up collaborations, and we're going to have to be focused and honest about making sure that folks who are least likely to get diverted, not because they're not eligible or not capable or anything like that, but because the way these systems are set up, they're least likely. The county's own data showed us that folks who are least likely to be released from the county jails is Black folks with mental health disabilities. And so that is something that I think we are going to have to apply a lot of attention and a lot of pressure to. Again, that also applies to CRDF, which is often not thought about as a place that houses people with mental health disabilities, at least in the general public, but there are folks currently suffering there, and we need to make sure that that emphasis exists, and it felt important to name that.
Thank you for that. Anything else from the panelists? Okay, Maria S., you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We do, yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having this meeting. My name is Maria Skelton, and I just want to say thank you for all of the information that you brought to everyone in this meeting. My question is, is there a thing called, I think is inmate family council, to where the inmates, family members, and our loved ones could sit on the board and bring the concerns of the inmates to like the sheriffs or anyone involved with the prison? That's one. And another, where can I find the address to mail books? And for someone that deals with re-entry people, I supply all of their toiletries with the help of different celebrities and stuff like that. I would like to be more involved. So I would like to know more information, of course, on these meetings and how to get more involved and bring resources to try to help. And thank you so much for this meeting.
Thank you. We'll open that up to any of the panelists if you have any responses to her questions.
I think I'll take, if I understood the questions correctly, she asked about a family council and how can families communicate with us as it relates to their loved ones in our jails. Currently, the system in place, you can go to lasd.org. Our website has contact information for every one of our facilities, as well as the phone numbers to those facilities. You can contact, you can also find your loved ones through their booking number, where they are housed in our system, and place you in contact with that facility. I have personally fielded emails and phone calls from family members concerned about their loved ones, their care, and issues related to their incarceration. So right now, that is the mechanism in place, is contacting the facility directly so that they can help you with any needs that you have or questions that you have as it relates to your loved one that's incarcerated within our system, as well as obviously visiting the facility itself if you have the means to do so. And I don't know, in terms of books, I'm sorry, we right now are accepting those donations through our Inmate Services Bureau, and they are the ones that are tasked with distributing those books to our various facilities. That information is also, well, the information, contact information at Inmate Services Bureau is also on our website. However, to Ms. Williams' point earlier, we can put an additional link or message to that information on our website, so it's more clear where book donations go.
Thank you. And that is the last question. Oh, we do have one last one. Cerise, it looks like you're just in time to be the very last question before we close out. So Cerise, I've sent a notification for you to unmute yourself. If you can acknowledge that, Cerise. Okay, please go ahead with your question. And Cerise, I apologize, but we are not hearing you. I can see that you're talking through the microphone, but we don't hear you. So I apologize for that, Cerise. You may have another application open. That... Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Cerise Castle here. I'm a reporter for Knock LA. This question is for Sergio Aloma. Sergio, I saw a photo of you with a tattoo of a roadrunner on your inner ankle. I was hoping you could tell us what that roadrunner means.
Okay, thank you for your question, Cerise. Assistant Sheriff Aloma, if you wanted to respond before we turn it back to Commissioner Garcia.
Sure. That's a tattoo that I've had for about 25 or 30 years. I'm an avid runner. I've completed dozens of marathons, including the Boston Marathon. And it's something that it goes back. I also ran in college and in high school. So I just, again, an avid runner and cyclist. And it's something that I put on many, many years ago as a symbol of my passion for road running, and also my like of Warner Brothers cartoons.
Okay, thank you for that, Assistant Sheriff Aloma. And Commissioner Garcia, I'm going to turn it back to you for closing.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your thoughts today, and from the community members for tuning into this important conversation hosted by the Civilian Oversight Commission. We had a robust conversation, and a closing thought from my end that came up as I heard everyone today speaking. Years ago in my research, I came across this American Correctional Association quote, which is part of their credibility standards. And it reads, secure facilities such as jails and prisons must operate effectively as self-contained communities in which all necessary goods and services are provided in a safe, secure, and controlled manner. as we move forward with these issues that have been in the jail and access to care. These conversation and discussions will continue. We hope everyone can join us at the upcoming community meeting in Palmdale on Saturday, May 13th at 10 a.m. And the next commission meeting is set for Thursday, May 18th at 9 a.m. at St. Anne's Conference Center. Please visit coc.lacounty.gov for more information and to RSVP. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. This concludes our conference.